Yodna day, peoples. One angry pagan here, Shadow Wita. Okay, I thought I'd just have a look through some stuff. I haven't done it in a little while. Some clips from Sky News and stuff. See what we can find. Obviously, as per usual with me, like get the audio. There's no visuals for me at the moment because I'm stupid and I can't seem to work that out at the moment. But yeah, we'll have a look. So what we got on Sky News? Labour quiet on public services spending. What? Let's have a look.
Okay, so what about tomorrow?
Nope. Wedding. Day after?
Oh, I'm in Spain. Next week?
No.
22nd? Can't. Got a tash wax. Well, how about right now?
Sure.
I hate that advert. Like, why? Gordon's? It's awful drink.
Tony Blair's 1997 landslide, Labour managing to restore public trust in the party's ability to manage the country's finances. Almost 3 decades on, Sir Keir Starmer faces a similar challenge, with reports he could lock Labour in to the Tories' short-term spending plans at the next election. The Shadow Chancellor refusing to say if she would outspend her opposite number.
I don't think we should be fixated with any particular current forecast because they'll be updated 2 more times before we get to the next election. But there's no contradiction between being fiscally responsible and wanting to support public services. In fact, you can't support public services unless you put fiscal economic responsibility at the heart of everything you do.
This is why I get annoyed with Rachel. She using these catchwords.
But as they stand, those spending plans set by this man, the Chancellor, are tight. So much so that faced with stubborn inflation and low growth, current Treasury ministers are sounding cold on the prospect of tax cuts anytime soon.
I'm a Conservative, so of course I want our taxes to be as low as possible, but I also believe in fiscal responsibility. And so coming out of the pandemic, when we spent £400 billion supporting people through furlough, we have to now pay back that money and act.
It's like everything before the pandemic didn't exist.
Responsibly with those debts.
Plans for how to run this place take up much of a party's manifesto, but amid a cost of living crisis, the numbers will matter more than ever at the coming election. Rachel Reeves is promising a steady ship here at the Treasury if Labour gets into power, but that promise of cautious spending worries others in the party who want to see more money going into public services and more broadly a bolder offer to the country. A recent scaling back on the timings around a green investment package was seen as evidence of this tension. One economist says current Labour plans to raise money are relatively modest.
I think at the moment it's fair to say that if you tot up all the existing commitments from Labour on tax, it's in the single-digit billions. If they stick to that sort of envelope, that does make it harder to deal with challenges like social care, like the NHS, like improving childcare.
Dubbed the Iron Chancellor, the challenges for Labour now are arguably bigger than those faced by Gordon Brown in the 90s. Whether the party has the mettle to address them may soon become clear.
Single-digit billions. Is that all they can? Is that all we've gotten so far? Honestly, I don't believe everything you hear on Sky News, but like. That is underwhelming. I have to admit that's rather underwhelming. What else have we got? Flight from Hell? I don't know. Threads versus Twitter. See, I'm not on either, right? Okay, well, I'm gonna have a look at this. I'm not on either Twitter or Threads. Okay, let me know in the chat, in comments. Sorry, what? And please like and subscribe. Please let me know in the comments whether you think. Let me know whether you think I should get into this space. I am trying to push out as as a content creator, but I'm not sure yet whether I'm on Facebook and I'm on YouTube, and boo, but that's it's a different thing. Facebook and YouTube and Discord really are what I'm on, and I want to know should would you guys follow me if I was on Twitter or Threads? I don't know. Let's have a look. What's this about? It's not about fucking alcohol, I'll tell you that much. I swear I heard the girls up. Been hearing the rats wandering around. Oh, okay, Bertie.
Let's talk about it, should we? James Titcombe, technology editor at The Telegraph, and Druji Shah, a freelance journalist and creative lead at the consultancy. Have you thought about it? Have you thought about Threads? What do you think?
I have been thinking about Threads, and actually I've been putting some of my thoughts out on Threads because that seems to be the place to put your thoughts right now. It seems a very confused arena, but I'm hoping that at some point people will be able
Druji Shah, freelance journalist,
to find their voice. Maybe we'll be able to find our voices on it, but it is very, very... I think it's a bit like an ice skating rink. Go there, try your hand at it. Hopefully you won't get cut. Hopefully you'll be able to sort of master the skill.
Twitter threatens to sue Meta over this. I didn't know that. This kind of thing doesn't really interest me all that much. It's annoying, but yeah.
Maybe hold back.
James?
Trucy said it was like an ice skating rink. I kind of feel it's a bit like a party right at the start where there's still the free drinks and everyone's still excited. There's a lot of novelty value. There's a lot of them.
Okay, I'm not sure about this guy's name, but okay, he's the technology editor of The Telegraph. Great. James Titcombe. As in Titcombe. Yeah.
Momentum at the moment probably hits 100 million users today, which is...
Why do you need a comb for tits? Anyway.
Astonishing for something that's less than a week old. Whether it's got that staying power, I think is less certain. It seems very whimsical. It's a bit more like Instagram than Twitter in a sense.
What to post.
Yes, exactly. It's you're not sure whether to post photos. You're not sure whether to post about news and politics. The head of Instagram, Adam Passeri, was on Threads this weekend, and he was saying it's not going to be a place for news and politics like Twitter, and that's such a huge thing for Twitter. And so there is this question of what it's for.
It's a text. They even say they use Threads. There's a Threads dictionary that's doing the rounds in terms of they want Threads to be a synonym for discussion. And let's face it, Facebook, which is what Meta was, we do use that as a noun, as a verb. I'm going to Facebook something. So I think that's partly the intent. Is you've got to thread something. It is a discussion point. That's what they've currently said. It's supposed to be a friendlier place. How long it will stay friendly, who knows?
Threads, if you're from Wigan, means trousers.
With the online world, it's not going to remain friendly for long. I'll tell you that much. I'll tell you that for nout. Okay. See, this is this is partly why I kind of, it sort of attracts me and why it doesn't. The politics side of things is why I want to get into that space. However, anyone who's spoken to me over Discord or has watched plenty of these videos knows I can get pretty pissed off. So, yeah.
But then you go, that's a
let
whole
me know
different
if I
discussion.
should. Let me know if I should.
What I don't understand is why would I have Instagram and Threads?
Either
because
one,
I can post words on Instagram as well if I'm so inclined.
I think people possibly have different personas on the two. Instagram for a lot of people is still a private thing. It's for their friends and family. Threads is more that public facing thing, especially for
Insta. I'm not on Instagram. I'm not on what they call TikTok. I'm not on Reddit or anything like that. That's another one. I've seen other content creators on Reddit. Should I join Reddit? Let me know. I'm not gonna do it if there's not, if I don't, if others feel that it's really not gonna be any point.
Professionals, politicians, public figures, you're posting about the new.
I was told that I when I came up with the idea for coming onto YouTube, or being on Facebook was one where it was more about communication rather than scrolling through and doing all the other stuff that other people do on social media. For me, it's more about communication. For between family and friends. Whereas, with the YouTube thing, I talked about should I do it? Other people, yeah, you should go ahead with it. So I was like, okay, fair enough. But I when it comes to Twitter and this Threads, should I? I don't know.
News you're posting about the things that you're thinking about, and there's going to be lots of jokes. There's going to be lots of discussion out there. I still think it's finding its feet. This is something that's been created really quickly.
Sorry, I just need to read. I was reading something at the bottom of the screen whilst not listening to what the hell this guy was saying. 2 seconds.
Posting about the things that you're thinking about, and there's going to be lots of jokes. There's going to be lots of discussion out there. I still think it's finding its feet. This is something that's been created really quickly. The Threads team has put this together in less than 6 months, and there are a lot of features that aren't there. So I still think they're figuring out what it's for.
There are challenges actually around accessibility as well, in terms of making sure that everybody can use Threads. Because if it's supposed to be an inclusive place, then you need to make sure that if somebody's disabled and they need to be able to sort of read the
Will they be open to the pagan community?
Threads, as it were, that they have that access. So it's been interesting also sort of watching that and seeing people say, hold on a minute, you need to factor these considerations in too.
Yeah. What other things would you... the fact that you can't post simultaneously on an Instagram and Threads is a bit annoying, I think. And also, I don't know who's following me, so I don't know whether I like who's following me or not. I've not been able to find that functionality yet. So it is infancy. Why did they rush it out?
Well, I think Elon Musk bought Twitter almost a year ago, $44 billion.
And look what he fucking did with it.
And a lot of people think that he hasn't done a particularly good job doing that, and he's created this open goal for a company to come in with a similar product. Mark Zuckerberg has always had this sort of Roman Empire sort of sense about him, that he wants to dominate a lot of social media, and he thinks Twitter is sort of one of the few that's managed to survive while Meta still exists, and I think he sees an opening there to take advantage of it.
But there is a challenge, because we were talking about Threads and Instagram. Currently, the situation is that you cannot delete your Threads account if you've created it without deleting your Instagram. You can deactivate it.
I didn't know that.
This is the discussion right now.
Oh. I don't have Insta. So how would that affect me? I only have Facebook. So will I just not be affected then?
There's a lot evolving and a lot of concerns.
See why they've done that, can't you? Because if you're fed up with it, you don't want it anymore, you still have to leave it there. So the numbers are still up.
Yeah.
Some might say, I'm sure that's not the reason, but there we are.
And I think there's this question of how long Meta is going to be interested in Threads. Instagram's been very successful. Facebook's been very successful. But there are things that the Meta have launched that haven't been very successful. A year ago, Mark Zuckerberg was always talking about the metaverse and how we're going to be in virtual reality and holding meetings in these 3D worlds. Very little talk about that these days. So Threads is the flavour of the month. But if you're someone who spent years building a Twitter following, are you really going to transfer over there and sort of put yourself at the whim of someone who has maybe not shown sort of long-term interest in products like that.
How's Twitter doing?
It's changed, hasn't it? I mean, we all know that. It's changed. It doesn't, I think for a lot of people, it doesn't feel safe. And that's actually, I was thinking about this with Threads. Perhaps Threads and brands especially can step into a place where, Twitter would be a place where if you couldn't get hold of a brand to complain about something, you couldn't go into live chat because you'd be going around with the bots, etc. You couldn't get hold of a real person. Often you go to Twitter and say, I'm having a problem with my fridge. My fridge is broken. And the brand would step in. It doesn't feel that safe for a lot of people right now to go to Twitter and put their personal details out there so that the brand can get in touch. It could be that maybe Threads, if it's a discussion point, could tap into that gap.
And a lot of people have had concerns with how Elon Musk is running Twitter. There have been outages. He's got rid of a lot of the team, and there have been questions about the sustainability of that as a company. A lot of advertisers have left. Advertising revenue has plummeted, basically. But Twitter has always been a sort of slightly dysfunctional company, and it's still managed to have this enormous audience. People tweet every day. They're addicted to it. It just seems to have this staying power. This is clearly the biggest challenge to it in its history, probably. But I think we're still going to see what's going to happen.
How much of a mistake, though, was it the blue tick changes? I was reading about what was happening with the riots in France and some suggestions that weaponry that was designed to go to Ukraine was actually being used on the streets of Paris. And actually, it turned out that it was images from 5 years ago. But because somebody had a blue tick, you didn't know if they were paying for it or not, and it was taken as read.
You can't trust anything on the internet. That would be you can't. That's the valuable lesson. Yes, the blue tick situation has really helped amplify the misinformation, disinformation sphere. The thing is, though, when it comes to Meta, they're also rolling out blue ticks in a verified subscription manner as well. So I wish I knew the answer. I wish I really had an answer for you with this. I don't. And it is a problem. It's a significant problem. All you can do is be skeptical with anything you see on the internet and second check. Get other references.
Okay. Guys, we're out of time. That was fascinating stuff. Thanks very much indeed. Maybe we can check in again in a month and see where it is.
Yeah. This is why I'm not sure whether I should bother. If you guys think there's that it might do some good for me to go on there. Fine, I'll go on there. But that just kind of reinforces a lot of the reasons why I boycott that kind of shit. What else have we got? Labour, BBC allegations. BBC allegations? I don't want to get sued by the fucking... Thames Water secures £750 million in funding from share. Where's the rest of it, shareholders? You've had billions. What?
Captain and Cola float, yeah? You got that.
I get really annoyed at this capitalist bullshit. These people have had billions. Where's this money? This is a public...
Okay, don't forget, Thames has already drawn on some £500 million worth of equities from its shareholder earlier this year. It has a variety of shareholders. They include OMERS, which is a giant Canadian pension fund, and USS, which is the Universities Superannuation Scheme, which is basically the pension fund for Britain's university lecturers, past and present. So those shareholders, they've already put in £500 million this year. They've agreed this morning to put in another £750 million.
What?
But the company
Billions we need!
Equity fundraisings will be required over the next regulatory period.
Bollocks!
That is due to run from 2025
absolute bollocks.
To the end of the...
These people have had billions off of the UK public, and instead of reinvesting it into the water system, they've just siphoned it off of themselves. And they give fucking just over $1 billion, $1.25 billion. And they're like, oh, now we need fundraising. Fuck off! You bastards have had billions. What a piss take.
the decade, and Thames saying that it will have to put in, it will expect its shareholders to put in another £2.5 billion over that period to support the investments required in the network.
2.5? I would put 5 billion into as a full investment. Why? Just because because that's what they say. I reckon that's underinvestment. I reckon you need 5 billion because of what they're saying. Double what they're saying. Why? Because usually these people are like, oh yeah, this is the amount we actually need over this. No. Like, this is like the minimum so you can still keep taking profit. So you can keep gaining billions whilst putting in. Fuck off. They could easily I reckon these shareholders between them could easily fit 5 billion on there. I reckon they could. But will they? No. Why? Greed. Capitalist fucking greed. Fucking bollocks.
Yeah, I think you could say that, Kay. I mean, don't forget the scheme, which is basically the pension fund for Britain's university lecturers, past and present. So those shareholders, they've already put in £500 million this year. They've agreed this morning to put in another £750 million, but the company is warning that further equity fundraisings will be required over the next regulatory period. That is due to run from 2025 to the end of the decade. And Thames saying that it will have to put in, it will expect its shareholders to put in another £2.5 billion over that period to support the investments required in the network. Now, Thames's financial circumstances have been laid out today. The company's also published its financial results. These cover the year to the end of March. And during that time, the company reported a pre-tax loss on an underlying basis of £82.6 million. Now, that actually represents an improvement. The comparable figure during the previous 12 months was £895.5 million. And really, what is weighing down on this company is its debts. Its financing costs during the last 12 months was some £476 million. And during the last 12 months, its overall debt position...
Wait. Million? The priorities for these people are so fucking messed up. Just want to rewind that a little bit.
£6 million, and during the last 12 months was some £476 million. And really, what is weighing down on this company is its debts. Its financing costs during the last 12 months was some £476
million, right? You did say that, right?
£million.
Yes, million. But they secured 750 million. They could wipe it. They could clear that debt. The shareholders could clear that debt. I could be completely idiotic here, but I like what? They put over. Capitalists piss me off to no fucking end. They really fucking do. The selfishness, greed.
And during the last 12 months, its overall debt position has increased from £12.5 billion, just shy of £14 billion. That really sort of spells out the need. That's why new equity is required.
Repeat that.
Increased from £12.5 billion, just some £476 million. And during the last 12 months, its overall debt position has increased from £12.5 billion, just shy of £14 billion.
Again, like, I'm sorry, but like these shareholders they've been taking out of this. It needs to be put in public ownership, not temporary public. Like in the blurb, it says, fucking Thames Water says it has secured a commitment for an additional £750 million investment by shareholders as the company raises to avoid the possibility of being placed in temporary public ownership. Bring it into public ownership permanently. Water should be owned by the public, not by private businesses. They don't have a history of investing. Oh, they have a history promising they'll invest, but they don't actually have a history of doing that investment. Otherwise, we wouldn't be seeing the problems we're having now. Pretty self-fucking evident. Oh, it just... Fucking bastards. I hate them. Six people stabbed near a kindergarten in China? No, what?
Okay, so what about tomorrow?
Oh, no, fuck off with your alcohol. What's this, eh? Six people, including 3 children, 1 teacher and 2 parents, have died in the stabbing attack in China. Fucking hell.
That played out at a kindergarten in the Lianjiang area of Guangdong province. That's right in the very southeast of China. It looks like it happened at sort of school drop-off time, if you like. It all started playing out, according to police, at about 7:40 this morning, just at that time when people were likely dropping their children off to kindergarten. And what we know at the moment is that 6 people have sadly died. 3 of those are children. 1 is a teacher and 2 parents as well. We don't know a huge amount about exactly how it played out, but the police have said that a 25-year-old man has been arrested. They've given his surname only as Wu and said that he is from that area. But look, this sort of thing really, really rocks China in the very rare instance that it happens. And the reason for that is that violent crime of this nature is actually extremely unusual in China, and schools and kindergartens are actually very highly securitized in a way that they aren't necessarily in the UK. So even this sort of thing happening is much, much more difficult. And although these things are rare, there have been a few instances of kindergarten stabbings in recent years. There was one last year and a really particularly terrible one in 2018 in the city of Chongqing, where 14 people died. So very, very shocking. It's absolutely swept Chinese social media this morning, this incident. But certainly a real, real tragedy in the province of Guangdong.
Wow. It's not often I hear. I mean, I don't know if this is a case of it doesn't happen very often, or it doesn't happen, like, or we don't hear about it because of the CCP. It could be a mix of both. I don't know, but wow. Damn. Okay, what we got here? Okay, well, we'll do a little bit of Sophie Ridge from yesterday. Sophie Ridge, she pissed me right off. But I'm going to go that you can watch my video about that. Start off with the military expert. See what's going. It's like, this is the thing about the cluster bombs. that it looks like the US is giving to Ukraine. But go for it. If it's only being used on Russian troops, fine. Like.
So it feels right, doesn't it, on the kind of eve, if you like, of this visit by President Biden to the UK to look a little bit about that relationship between the UK and the US. How healthy is it right now?
I think it's good, and I think the Windsor framework lifted a cloud from it. President Joe Biden has always had strong attachment.
Former National Security Advisor Lord Ricketts.
In Ireland, I think that was a big factor for him. The idea the Good Friday Agreement might have been undermined. That's out of the way now. He's seen Prime Minister Sunak several times. The UK is a leading ally on Ukraine, which is vital. It's an important friend for the US on China as well. So I think the relationship is in good shape.
That's interesting about the important friend on China as well. Do you feel that perhaps Rishi Sunak is taking decisions to appeal to the US to try and make sure that alliance is healthy?
I think he's very conscious that we've got to have a relationship with the Americans on economic security, things like supply chains and AI and those new technology issues, as good as the national security relationship. And so when he was in Washington, he had this Atlantic Declaration, which set out a whole lot of undertakings to work more closely with the Americans. In a way, they're already working with the Europeans. And on China, I mean, the UK, I think, understands perhaps better than some Europeans the importance of China for the US, and that if ever we got to a serious crisis over China, the UK would be an ally and doing everything we can to help.
I guess Rishi Sunak is often seen as someone...
Doing what? Our military is at the worst it's been in a very long time. Run down largely by the Tories. Like, what?
Who is naturally affiliated to the US. He's obviously spent a lot of time there with his family as well. Do you think that's useful in this relationship?
I think it's comfortable, yeah. I mean, he works well with the Americans. We can never expect the Americans to be sentimental about the relationship with the UK, and you can always overdo the personal factor. I mean, the fact is that President Biden works very closely as well with the Europeans, with Australians, Japanese, and so on. We are one of the allies, but still a very useful one. And his visit to London, his visit to the King, is all symbolic of that.
I guess I've always had a bit of a question mark about President Biden's view of the UK, so I'd be interested to sort of get your thoughts as well. You know, he's mispronounced Rishi Sunak's name a couple of times. He obviously had concerns over Brexit and Northern Ireland in particular. Do you think he really is someone who values that special relationship?
Well, I'm always slightly nervous about this special relationship rhetoric. I mean, the Americans have many special relationships. They know they have to say that to the Brits because there's some slightly needy quality about the UK. I think he sees us as an important ally. It's nothing like it was in the sort of Second World War period where we were the number one ally. Yes, he has strong Irish attachments. But he's got many, many other fish to fry. And where the UK can be helpful in a transactional way, that's fine. But we shouldn't expect any special favours.
Especially after fucking Brexit.
Let's talk a little bit about Ukraine, shall we? Because we've got the NATO summit coming up. Ukraine obviously will be a big part of the discussions between Rishi Sunak and Joe Biden. How big of an issue is this cluster bombs factor? We've had both Rachel Reeves and Victoria Atkins criticising the US decision, saying that they wouldn't have made it.
But you can feel the allies are all very uncomfortable with this. We've all of us, apart from the Americans, signed up to the convention, which means we don't produce or stockpile or use these weapons. I mean, they are indiscriminate weapons, of course. I think we do owe it to the Ukrainians to understand why they need these weapons. You know, this offensive that they've launched, there's a lot riding on it. If it stagnates, bogs down, the risk is this war will just continue. They haven't had the level of precision munitions from the West they wanted. We haven't given them the fighter aircraft they wanted. And they see this as a potential game changer. This, admittedly horrible weapon is designed to use against dug-in, entrenched forces. And as I say, if they can't break through in this fight, which is going on their territory, this is weapons for use on their territory, then the risk is it will continue. So it's a hard choice of the kind that countries have to make in wartime. I'm uncomfortable with it. Yes, I wish it wasn't being done, but I think we can understand why they're doing it.
Do you think perhaps, just listening to you now, it's almost an admission that the Ukrainian counteroffensive isn't making the progress that it needs to?
Yes, in a way, I think it is. I think they have not had a breakthrough. That's probably not surprising because the Russians spent the winter digging in. They know they need momentum. They know with the NATO summit and allied eyes watching them, if it looks like it's bogging down, then Western support may begin to tail off. And of course, they've got an eye on the American elections at the end of next year. So they're desperate to make progress, and I think they see this weapon as potentially helping on that.
Talking about the American election, what's your kind of predictions then? Crystal ball time.
Well,
Come on, let's do it.
That's a fool's game, isn't it? There's still a long way out. There's still a long way out.
That's true.
I mean, right now, it looks like it could be a rerun between Biden and Trump, which seems extraordinary in a nation of 350 million people, two men who are neither of them young. It may change, but that's the way it seems to be settling at the moment. And so even the fact that Trump is in the field, we'll be sending jitters through allied capitals.
Do you think through the UK will be sending a few jitters then as well?
I would guess so, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I often wonder what would have happened if Putin had launched the war in Ukraine while Trump was in the White House.
And what do you think would have happened?
Well, I don't know. I think the alliance would have been all over the place because I don't think we could have trusted Trump to take a sound decision, on where allied interests lay.
That's very interesting. It's always difficult to frame this question in the correct way.
That was really based. I love that. I mean, I really would have said the same thing about Boris. Because, but yeah.
But there are
That's really
concerns and questions in the US about Joe Biden's age as well. And how sort of legitimate do you think they are?
I mean, democracy, they are legitimate, of course. I mean, this is perhaps the most powerful job in the world, and people are going to pose that as a question. Trump is not all that much younger, actually, in fact. So, yeah, it's an issue. It will be tested and contested in the American election process like no other, and we'll see if he comes through.
Really interesting to talk. Thank you very much for giving us your analysis.
Fucking hope he doesn't. Bollocks to that. What else we got here? SNP. Stephen Flynn. I like Stephen Flynn, I've got to admit. Absolutely, he's brilliant. Mary Black, brilliant as well. But Stephen Flynn, epic.
And thinking, goodness me, when are we actually going to talk about some more positive things when it comes to the SNP?
Well, we actually do have a lot of positive things to talk about at the moment when it comes to the SNP because, despite the challenges that we face, we still enjoy a fairly comfortable poll lead over the Labour Party and a huge poll lead over the Conservative Party, which comes as no surprise to anyone in Scotland. But perhaps more importantly, when it comes to the independence numbers in Scotland, we're still roughly where we were before all this started, around about 50-50, give or take a few percent here or there. And that gives me a lot of cause for hope and a lot of cause for optimism.
OK, I want to talk about some of those issues a bit later on. But if I may start with the story that's on the front page of a lot of newspapers today, we've been talking about it with our other guests as well. BBC presenter, unnamed, allegedly paying £35,000 for explicit photographs of a young person starting when they were 17. The mother says that money was then spent on crack. What's your reaction?
I think everyone who's seen this story is deeply concerned by it and deeply distressed about what this means. I think there's a number of questions for the BBC to answer here, not least when they knew about this, and if they did know about it, why they've not acted. I would strongly anticipate that in the coming days, Parliament would expect some answers from the hierarchy of the BBC, and I don't think the public would expect anything less.
What do you think should happen if we don't get those answers?
Well, I think we have to get those answers, and that has to be the priority for all of us at this moment.
What if we don't?
Both the public
we have
and
to get them.
Parliamentarians. Now, parliamentarians have a great deal of sway in that regard. I would be amazed if the government isn't looking to put some of that sway to use today and over the coming days, and indeed the DCMS committee as well. We need to have clarity from the BBC as to what exactly is going on here, because these are very dangerous and very worrying allegations.
Do you think a law could have been broken?
I don't necessarily want to get into the specifics of whether a law's been broken, because I'm not hugely au fait
I reckon
with
laws
the
have
law
been broken
in that regard, but I'm very, very troubled by what's been suggested in the papers, as indeed I think everyone is.
The presenter hasn't been named. Of course, there's still allegations at the minute, important to point out, but they haven't been named. This has also led to some other high-profile people at the BBC having to come out because their own name has been falsely linked with the story. I mean, is there an argument that actually the BBC should just come out in the public interest and name this person?
I think as a public sector broadcaster, they perhaps have a duty to the public to make clear that where someone has acted inappropriately, which is what the suggestion here is that they've firstly taken action, and if they've not taken action, they need to be very clear as to why that is. I think it's ridiculous that you have to see the likes of Gary Lineker tweeting that he's not the person involved here. For them as individuals, that's deeply unfair, particularly given the seriousness of this issue.
I just want to move on to a couple of other subjects now, if I may. Thank you for talking about the story. Just Stop Oil has been something that we've been talking about a lot on the programme today, with very strong condemnation from both Victoria Atkins and Rachel Reeves, who actually said that she thinks they're a bit pathetic. What's your own view on Just Stop Oil?
I struggle with some of their practices, if I'm honest. I think when you're so the oil and gas industry is obviously hugely important to my constituency. Many of the people involved in the industry live within my constituency, or my neighbours, my own family working in the industry as well. They're not bad people. They're people who have a job to do and are just getting on with it. An engineer is an engineer, irrespective.
But we need to move away from, but those jobs need to end. Like, we don't do coal mining anymore. Those jobs ended. I'm sorry, but we have to move away from this shit. I mean, I'm hearing a lot. One of the things I'm hearing about. Oh, you know what? I'm not going to go into that subject right now. I'm just. Okay, I'm a little bit disappointed with Flynn here.
Whether they're on an offshore platform, or they're working onshore. So there is a little bit of nuance here.
No nuance. End of no new looking for oil. Deal with what we've got, and slowly shut that shit down.
Has to be had in the debate. So I'm a little bit troubled by some of their practices, if I'm honest. I don't see how it carries.
Because no one's fucking listening properly. Oh yeah, we hear you, and then just carry the fuck on. Complete bollocks.
Public support. I think some of the outrage over some of the instances is a little bit far-fetched, though. I mean, the confetti yesterday, I mean, was anyone hurt in that regard? And when you juxtapose that versus the storms in Zaragoza in Spain, I think we can see which ones actually caused the most damage here. Is it unfortunate?
I guess it's a wedding. That's what some people say, though. I mean, one of the most important days of your life.
I mean, it's very unfortunate, and I would probably be a little bit upset about it as well. But I'd probably take 4 steps and take the confetti off me. It's not someone's been hurt here, and perhaps that wasn't the biggest scandal of the day involving George Osborne.
Boom! This is why I like Stephen Flynn.
I don't say anything more on that, I think. Although I'm sure many of our viewers know what you're referring to. Right. This week marked 100 days of the newish First Minister Hamza Yousaf. How do you think he's doing?
I think he's doing brilliant. Because, as you outlined in your start, it's been a bit of a challenging time for the party, to say the least. We've had the difficulties internally, but I think Hamza's came through it. And what he has done is put the cost of living crisis front and centre, because I think all of us at this moment in time recognise that that's the biggest challenge facing people. And of course, when that is the biggest challenge, government needs to respond accordingly. And within the
Scottish viewers, any Scottish viewers, anyone from Alba, right? Let me know what the truth of the matter is with the NSA, with the performance of the SNP as the government. I don't want the propaganda bullshit. I don't want we're better than England. We're better than England. I know you're better than England. Okay, Wales suffers because of England. Okay, I know you're doing better. I want to know details. I don't want the propaganda messaging. I want details. Give me evidence, please. I'm not saying I don't believe you. I just want evidence. So I can then push this at English MPs to push them further up to that standard. So please, in the comments. Oh, again, subscribe.
Did the Scottish Parliament have Hamza sought to do that?
At the same time, though, I mean, we've talked about the hangover that he has from his predecessor being arrested. But also he's ditched or delayed quite a few key policies, legislation to set up a national care service, deposit return scheme, ban on alcohol advertising, protecting marine areas. Does it look a bit, I guess, shambolic is the word I'm looking for?
I think it looks like he's acting like a First Minister who wants to set his own agenda. And I think that's really encouraging. What Humza has sought to do is to reset our relationship with business, something which he's done. He's done very well and very quickly. He's also sought to listen to the views of communities.
How? You're doing a Tory trick here. How?
Have been impacted by, who would have been impacted by the likes of the HPMA proposal. This is a First Minister who's acting according to the wishes of the people, which is what you would expect from the Scottish National.
How?
At the same time, though...
usually he gives examples, and there's none here.
If you look at the polls, Labour are doing better in Scotland than they have done for an awfully long time. A poll last month in the Sunday Times suggesting that they would actually defeat the SNP at the next election for the first time since 2010. You a bit worried?
I think that was a rogue poll, and every other
poll.
Well, I think every other poll that we've seen over the course of recent months and indeed years has shown the SNP with a comfortable lead ahead of the Labour Party. But look, the next general election is going to be about change, and when it comes to that, I'm pretty optimistic about our hopes, and that's twofold, because when we look at the Labour Party, today you have reports that the Labour Party are simply going to follow through with Conservative spending plans when it comes to green energy proposals. They've walked away from the £28 billion of investment.
They have indeed. They said that they'll scale up in a couple of years. If you're talking about £28 billion a year, that is fair enough. And also Rachel Reeves said today that she wouldn't necessarily meet the 2-year spending plans of the Conservatives either.
Well, I think it's quite clear that the Labour Party, when it comes to some of these big issues, have been changing their mind on an almost daily basis. But of course,
it's a changeable situation. What? The Tories have been making things worse and worse. So when Labour have to go, they set plans and then they have to go, okay, these plans are actually possible now. Now things are getting worse. I wonder if this is why Labour haven't put out many concrete policies, if any, because the situation is elastic, so they have to their policy situation, as unedifying as it is, sort of itself has to be elastic. I don't like it, but this is an attack. I hear from the SNP supporters that Labour attacked the SNP the same way that the Tories do, but the SNP is attacking Labour in the same way they attack the Tories. It works both ways. I'm sorry, but it does. In this context, it actually works both ways. Because I will actually give it to Sophie Ridge there. She defended Labour. She actually put a defence up for Labour. Need to watch Rachel Reeves, who I'm not particularly enthralled with.
Beyond simply Tory spending plans and green energy proposals, the Labour Party are, of course, fully enthralled with Brexit. Now, that's anathema to voters in Scotland.
That's, again, we can't just rejoin. What Labour have been saying, however, is about realignment. Now, I've been seeing from Big Madge and others that some of their ideas are a bit is that even going to work? But the point is they're actually talking about it in the first place. But no. It's fully getting into Brexit. Brexit has happened. If I had to classify myself, I would call myself a Remainer/rejoiner. Right? But I'm not clamouring, I'm not going nutty about it, because I know that the EU has already said that they're not just going to let us back in. But I don't, like, I've not heard the same pro-Brexit language coming from Labour that I heard from the Tories. I'm sorry, I just haven't.
Where 72% of people want to be back within the European Union. So if you juxtapose the Labour Party and their negative proposals for the future versus the SNP's are planning.
What negative proposals?
To be at the heart of the European project, have access to the single market to really deal.
It's like these people expect it to just be able to walk into the EU. I almost think there's some, like, exceptionalism going on here with the mindset. Like, oh, it's fine. We'll just be able to, like, they'll accept us. It'll take years. You're still going to have to deal with Brexit in the meantime.
Deal with the cost of living crisis.
It's not like as soon as we go, oh, we want to rejoin, Brexit is immediately over. Like, is that really what people think is going to happen? For sake.
Be able to have more people of working age in our economy and to give people a choice over their own future. I think it's only quite clear to voters in Scotland that there's one party who offers change.
Okay. In terms of Scottish independence, again, I've already said on my channel that whilst I am a unionist in this context, like, at this point, if the Scottish want to leave, fair to them. They should be given another referendum. Again, I've kicked off about this language before. It's not even that they should be allowed. Like that shouldn't even come into it. They should have another referendum. It shouldn't be that they should be allowed to have another referendum. It should just be that they can have another, they're having another referendum. Who are we to tell them what to do? We English are not superior to the Scottish.
One party who offers real hope, and that's the SNP.
Can I ask you another question? Is the dirty secret of the SNP that actually you really want the Conservative to do quite well? Because support for independence is a lot easier to make that pitch if the alternative is a Tory-run government in Westminster. If the alternative is Labour and Keir Starmer, suddenly it's a bit harder to make that independence argument.
I would disagree fundamentally with the premise of your question there. So I'm a young lad for Dundee, and I had to grow up in the thralls of Conservative damage, which took away hope and opportunity for generations of people, which left industry on its knees and left people without opportunities. You know, under no circumstances would I ever countenance the Tories being good for Scotland, and that's why we've not voted for them since 1955. What we want is something better. We don't want just the same. We don't want Tory spending plans or a rollback on green energy policies or Brexit. We want Scotland to have its place in the world. We want to be part of the European community. We want to offer people hope and aspiration.
Rollback on green energy. Anyway.
For the future, change for a better future. You know, we see Ireland and what they're doing, Norway, what they're doing. Why not Scotland? Why can Scotland not have that hope?
You're talking about your view of the Conservatives when you were growing up. Given that, would you think about going into coalition with the Labour Party if it meant keeping the Conservatives out of power in Westminster?
So under no circumstances would a Scottish National Party member of Parliament want to be part of a coalition. I don't want to be part of.
Sure, I don't want to be, but would you do it?
No, I don't want to be part of a UK coalition. That's for politicians. I shouldn't be voting on matters to do with England or Wales or otherwise. What I would do is seek to, where there's opportunity, support a government which was adhering to principles that the people of Scotland voted for, like the opportunity to decide their own future. So it's a pretty clear line that the Labour Party would need to cross to come and have conversations with us, and I'd be quite happy to have those conversations with you.
I'm being told we're out of time, but I've got one more.
Okay.
More that I'm just going to squeeze in, if I may. Sorry, Scott, who's in my ear telling me that we're out of time. Your deputy in Westminster, youngest MP in 350 years, Murray Black, she said she wants to step down because of a toxic environment in Westminster. She said she thinks it's one of the most unhealthy workplaces you could be in. It's a poisonous place. Is she right?
Yes, she is. And I think it's a challenge for all of us across society to reflect upon the fact that Mary, someone who was, as you said, elected as the youngest MP in 300 odd years, who is stepping down in her late 20s because of the culture in Westminster. Surely something is is going wrong, and surely collectively we can seek to right that wrong.
What is going wrong?
Well,
wait a minute. You said the whole premise of what he was trying to say before was he doesn't want to be a part of like how things are done in the rest of the country, in the rest of the UK. So this is where I get like a bit into a bit of a conflict with the SNP, because it's like they'll if they took the same position that Sinn Féin did, I'd actually be more understandable. Like, it sounds strange, like in Northern Ireland, I mean. It sounds strange, but I almost think that I'm not entirely decided on it, so like, don't beat me up, Scottish people. But a part of me really does think that the SNP would have a stronger position if they did what Sinn Féin are doing. I just do. I'm not sure. Like, at this point, if they suddenly go, you know what? If you're going to be like this, we're off. Like, do I think that they should never have been part of Westminster? I don't know. But at this point, I think it would be useful to them to go, you know what? We're going to do a Sinn Féin. We're not going to attend Parliament. The Westminster Parliament. We're just not going to do it. In the same manner as Sinn Féin. Not until you start fucking listening to us. I don't know. Because you're not listening to... Like, when we're down there, you won't listen to us. So what's the point in being down there? I think that's the kind of gist I get from them anyway, so...
Well, Westminster, the entire environment, as Mary said, is indeed...
No, that's not actually me speaking against the Scots. That's actually a position for the SNP. That's I actually think that would be good for the SNP.
Toxic is not fit for purpose. You have a legislature which is based upon simply disagreeing with people rather than working constructively together. Now you get this notion that Westminster is the mother of all parliaments. Well, I would quite happily invite anyone to come to Westminster on Tuesday night when we are going to be debating the legal immigration.
Mum's a bitch.
Bills and see if that's the mother of all parliaments, because it will simply be mud getting thrown around with late night votes into the middle of the morning with no hope, no optimism. That's not healthy. That's not good for anyone.
Okay, thank you very much indeed for being on the programme.
Thank you.
Stephen Flynn there.
I don't know. I get annoyed with. There are some arguments I find very annoying with the SNP. They really are. I don't know. What else have we got here? I got the Tory. Let's have a look.
I just want to start off, if I may, with claims in the Sun newspaper that a BBC presenter has paid a 17-year-old, now 20-year-old, £35,000 for explicit pictures. Do you have any concerns about the way this has been handled by the BBC?
Well, these are very, very serious allegations, and the BBC have said that they have processes in place, but I think as public attention and concern grows, the BBC is going to have to act very swiftly to deal with these allegations and to set out what they are doing to investigate them.
I mean, according to the alleged victim's mother, she complained to the BBC on May the 19th, but the presenter then stayed on air until quite recently. I mean, that could be as many as 6 weeks later.
Yes, as I say, we will have to see what the BBC has to say about this, but these are very serious allegations, and I can quite understand the public concern about them.
Priti Patel, former Home Secretary, has said the treatment of the complaint was derisory, and she said that the BBC should hold a full and transparent investigation. Do you agree with that?
Well, it may well be.
That's funny, because when people are saying that she should that Priti Patel should be investigated herself, she was like, "Oh no, I don't deserve investigation." Fuck off, hypocrite.
That happens in due course. I mean, with allegations of this kind, we as a government have worked very hard over the years to try to help.
I'm sorry, the Tory government has worked very hard over the years. Oh, to get yourselves rich. Oh yeah, and your mate's rich. Yeah, okay.
complainants of very serious allegations, both in the criminal courts and with the police, and I would expect...
The Tories have... Oh, my God. I abhor Tories trying to talk up about the criminal courts these days. Why? Because they've spent so long trying to destroy them. And trying to lambaste them because they don't want to be taken to criminal court. It's a facade for the Tories to say this shit.
Other institutions that have responsibilities to the public to have similar high standards.
Yeah, you've done quite a lot on this yourself, haven't you? Is there an issue with the way that we treat victims in this country who come forward with allegations?
Well, we do everything we can to support victims, and obviously I'm not commenting on these specific allegations, but more generally we have tried, we've conducted a forensic examination of every stage of the criminal justice process to try to support complainants giving their best evidence. So, for example, we've rolled out video recorded evidence across the country to help complainants give their evidence as quickly as they possibly can, because we know that sometimes that can be a pressure and it can lead to them stopping the case if they're concerned about delays. But I would always encourage victims of such behaviour to come forward.
Yeah. But, surely there's a lot more that can be done than that. Surely. I get really triggered by the government saying we're working really hard, especially Tory government. It really pisses me off.
To go back to the specifics of this allegation, what we've seen in recent days is other high-profile BBC presenters having to come out on social media to say it wasn't them. In the case of some people, they've even had to go to the police to report people who've wrongly accused them on social media. How concerning is this?
Well, I think in this age, now that we have social media, we are having to find ways of managing what that can mean. Social media can be a great thing, but it can also lead to some very significant concerns in cases where perhaps there's an investigation ongoing or people are making allegations, unfounded allegations. And so there is a responsibility for social media companies to take care of what is on their sites, and this is why with the online safety bill we are really tightening up the laws so that we have that assurance that we all want when it comes to the internet, not just in relation to these sorts of allegations, but mums and dads worrying about their children's access to the internet and so on. We want to try and make the internet as safe as it possibly can be.
Is there an argument that the presenter should be named?
As I said, I'm going to, if you'll forgive me, I'm just going to stay away from this because I think the BBC have to explain what they have done in recent weeks. And these allegations are so serious that at this stage I won't be commenting further.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you for what you have said about and what you felt able to say about the case and the allegations. I want to talk to you a little bit about international news now. President Biden, the US president, shortly in town. The PM's going to meet him before they go to NATO. Now, of course, the US has recently agreed to supply cluster bombs to Ukraine. Is that something that you agree with?
Well, we're very pleased that President Biden is coming this week. It's going to be the 5th time that the Prime Minister and the President have met in the last 5 months. And so the special relationship is still very much strong and secure. In relation to cluster bombs, we, the UK, have signed the convention that prohibits their use and discourages their use. And of course, we stick by that convention. And we are trying to do what we can to support Ukraine. So last year we spent some £2.3 billion in giving Ukraine help in all sorts of practical ways, including heavy artillery and tanks and so on. And we will continue that this year. But we have signed this convention, and for us, that is our position on these bombs.
Is it something that Rishi Sunak will be raising with President Biden?
Well, I imagine, of course, the subject of Ukraine will be discussed, not least because we have the NATO meeting this week. But the President and the Prime Minister have a very, very good working relationship.
Do they?
Okay.
Let's talk a little bit about I wonder just
because,
how
of course, as Financial Secretary for the Treasury, you are responsible for the tax system in the UK. How happy are you with the current levels of taxation?
Well, I'm a Conservative, so of course I want our taxes to be as low as possible, but I also believe in...
I'm sorry, every time I hear I want our taxes to be as low as possible, all I hear is we don't want public services.
Fiscal responsibility, and so coming out of the pandemic, when we spent £400 billion supporting people through furlough, through more funding for the NHS, through various schemes that we put in place rightly, and people were very, very, they wanted us to do this during the pandemic. We responded quickly. We responded really robustly. We have to now.
You didn't respond quickly. They had to, for a lot of their monetary fiscal policy, their more friendly fiscal policies, they had to be budged into it.
Pay back that money and act responsibly with those debts. Of course, we have since then had Ukraine, and we have again spent £94 billion to help people with the cost of living pressures that we're all facing over recent months. That's £94 billion that we have to account for.
I want to go back to some of the things that...
So this is why we're having to look at raising, for example, corporation tax.
I want to go back to some of the things you're talking about there on COVID and also Ukraine in a moment, but just to kind of be crystal clear about the tax burden, because I think we can have a little look at what it is. The overall tax burden in the UK at levels that, frankly, we haven't seen for decades. Well, this week, Jeremy Hunt effectively ruled out big tax cuts ahead of a general election in an interview with the Financial Times. We won't countenance tax cuts if they make the battle against inflation harder. And yet, look at the current tax burden. Is that really the right policy?
Well, we have to be fiscally responsible. So I do not want us to be passing on our debts to our children and our grandchildren.
I just want to look at this graph that they're showing, right? Just give me 2 seconds. Just want to look. Like, you can go find it on. It's just the one where I'll put I'll put the links up when this video is up. I'll put it into the blurb bit. 38% of GDP. Labour brought the tax right down, and then it jumped, and during the late 60s, 68, 69, bounced back up, come back down, and then jumped up into Callaghan, I think it was, into Margaret Thatcher, who then brought it back down again. But then all the way through Thatcher, this is hilarious, right? All the way through Thatcher, it rises, and then only halfway through Thatcher does it then start steeply dropping to its low to the second lowest point that it's ever been. And then after Thatcher, it just rises again. I mean, there's a bit of a drop back down after Blair came in, and it seems that the drops in tax actually come when Labour come in. I'm not kidding you. Like, the Tories say that they raise tax, that they lower taxes, right? But I'm not kidding you. A lot of these spikes, like the rises in the spikes, look like they happened during the start of the rises looked like, and the steepest parts of the rises look like it actually happens during Tory governments, not Labour ones. That's actually kind of hilarious.
Which is why we've said we have to have sound money. We cannot be borrowing money as perhaps Labour would like to. £28 billion to fund policy.
You can't really criticise Labour's economic plan when you look at the state of the economy after 13 years of the Conservatives.
Boom, motherfucker! Okay, that was a good line off of Sophie Ridge. She's fallen out of my favour for quite a while. That one comment just raised her up a little bit. She's not back in my good books.
Well, actually, in terms of the number one enemy at the moment is inflation. And one of the reasons leading to inflation, one of the factors behind the stickiness of inflation, is that we have a very tight labour market, which is a good news because that means after 13 years of Conservative government, we have more people in work than ever, very, very high employment rates. But that is having an impact on inflation. And so that is why at spring budget, you saw the Chancellor announce a huge package of support to
what she's not saying here is, whilst we've got a high employment rate, a high employment rate, a low unemployment rate, I should say. Like, there's also like a lack of jobs. There's a lack of people. I don't know. It just. I had the words in my head. That's really annoying. It's like we have a high unemployment, but there's still more people. Like, there's still jobs out there where people are going, we need people.
Get people back into the workforce, including the transformational childcare programme that is going to help mums and dads back into the workforce who perhaps are finding childcare too expensive at the moment.
You're talking about sound money under the Conservatives, and I think...
But your childcare plan won't even come into place until after the Labour government comes in. And you've not even actually set a proper plan for it. Not from what I've fucking seen. Again, if anyone can prove me wrong on that, please put evidence in the comments.
We can have a little look now at a global comparison of the deficit and also debt levels.
See, this bit's hilarious as well.
And you can see here how the UK is doing. This is a chart from the OBR showing there's 42 other countries around the world. We've got the third worst deficit.
And the fourth highest debt.
And when it comes to debt levels, we've got the fourth worst debt. Is this really sound money under the Conservatives?
And this is precisely why we are having to make very difficult decisions, both...
Oh my God. Because of your own fuck-ups! You can't be given credit for fixing your own fuck-ups. Not as government, no. You can fuck right off.
Both the autumn statement and at spring budget, but also why the Prime Minister's number one focus is on tackling inflation.
I guess
because as we're trying to pay these back, we are spending £120 billion a year on debt interest. I would much rather we were spending that money on the public services we all care about. But we have...
You don't want the taxes to pay for public services, though. So what the fuck?
To drive down this debt, which we are determined to do in the medium and long term, which is why it's one of the Prime Minister's 5 priorities.
I guess my question is,
help with those,
she looks panicked.
Those figures.
You were talking a moment ago about COVID and about the war in Ukraine and how that's impacted the economy in the UK. Well, it's also impacted all these other 42 economies as well. Why are we doing so badly?
Well, if you look, for example, if you look at rates of inflation, developed economies around the world are facing much higher inflation rates for all sorts of reasons. But we are particularly exposed, for example, on gas prices. We have
We are exposed because of Brexit.
Are on the grid.
This doesn't. What's being shown here wasn't necessary. This didn't have to happen.
Very exposed to international gas prices, and so that is why last autumn we announced the energy price guarantee, which has not only helped halve energy bills around the country, it's also knocked 2 percentage points off inflation. But we also want to help with things such as food inflation. We know that we import 50% of our food. My farmers in Lincolnshire would wish that it was far lower than that.
You want the workers! You won't give them the fucking workers! Bastards.
But because of that, we are much more susceptible to price rises in the worldwide price of wheat, for example, which means that...
Farmers need workers.
And comes through to our shelves on the supermarkets. And so as part of our work to tackle all of this, we're working with supermarkets, for example, to make sure that they're offering value ranges to try to help people, as you've described, who are finding times really tough at the moment.
This is complete bullshit.
there's obviously, as we've been talking about the economy,
no challenge
big
from
question marks on
from
whether
Sophie
or not the
Rich,
Prime
what's
Minister is going to meet some of his pledges when it comes to debt, when it comes to inflation. Another of the pledges, of course, is to stop the boats, which is obviously not really working. We're seeing, again, large numbers of people crossing the channel. But the one thing you have achieved on this is to actively make the decision to paint over a children's mural that was in a children's asylum centre. And the idea was that it was too welcoming. You can have a look at it here. Minnie and Mickey Mouse, Tom and Jerry.
It's too welcoming.
There, and that was painted over. The decision taken by Robert Jenrick, the immigration minister, because it was too welcoming.
Well, I think we've got to focus on the fundamentals here. If there are children arriving in the United Kingdom via small boats, then
their mental well-being should be part of those fundamentals, you bitch.
As soon as they land in the UK, they are looked after properly. You know, the local authorities step in, they have their welfare, their health needs and their schooling needs looked after. That is the fundamentals. But we also have to stop people from working.
That has nothing to do with the cartoons up on the damn walls. It's not just Mickey Mouse. I can see something better. Tom and Jerry on the back of the wall. Fuck's sake.
You know, being enticed by criminal gangs to cross the channel, because that journey in itself is such a dangerous journey.
What's that got to do with the kids who already arrive?
It must be terrifying for children who come across, and so that is why we're so focused on.
That's why you're so focused on fucking getting rid of cartoons that can make them feel a bit more comforted. Fuck off.
Stopping the boats, and in fact, if you look at where we are this year today compared to where we were a year ago,
response.
Actually the number of crossings
is
down. We have had a 90%
heartless bitch
decrease in the number of crossings by Albanians because of very, very close working with the Albanian authorities.
Fuck off.
And we are seeing the French deal that we struck has led to 33,000 crossings being stopped. So those are all steps in the right direction, but it is an incredibly difficult problem. And I don't think anyone pretends that when the Prime Minister set this priority, he or anyone else would.
She asked about the cartoons, you fucking bitch.
Was saying it was going to be easy. It is not.
Just looking at this picture, I don't believe you're comfortable with it. The decision to paint over, I don't believe it.
Well, I'm not comfortable with the idea that people would bring children across.
Oh my fucking God!
Of course, I can absolutely understand that, but that's not the decision of the children, is it? They end up in the decision to paint over this mural. It's a place where kids go. They must be terrified when they go and sit on those chairs. They don't know what's happening. They don't know.
No, they don't need cartoons. They should have blank walls.
Where they're going to go, and there was an active decision to paint over Mickey and Minnie Mouse. Are you happy with that?
Which is why the fundamentals of how we care for those children
That's
is
not my
so
question,
important.
though. Are you comfortable with it?
Fucking heartless cow.
You wouldn't have done it, would you?
When children come to the UK in those very frightening
circumstances... If this doesn't lose the Tories the next election amongst all the other bullshit...
and looked after properly by local authorities, that puts an enormous
Okay, I'm
pressure.
sorry, right? I'm sorry. Anyone who tries to tell me that that Labour are going to be just as bad as this, you can fuck yourself. I challenge you to an on-screen debate. I fucking dare you to defeat me on this. That the Labour would be this bad.
By the way, on the local authorities most affected by this, Kent is particularly at the forefront of this, and we have got to work. We've got to find ways
this is
of being fair to British citizens, because the more that people come across, the more pressures that puts on our public services. I mean, the figures speak for themselves. 4 years ago, 300 people came across in small boats. Last year, it was 45,000 people.
I think you can believe all of that and still be kind of uncomfortable about the idea that you're part of the government that would...
Uncomfortable?
Look, What I care about is how those children are looked after when they come here. And
no, you don't. You don't give a flying fuck at all.
And I'm confident that they are given the care and the welfare that we would expect, we would want.
Okay. Just finally,
I'm sorry,
George
that's
Osborne
complete.
got married yesterday.
That's complete bullshit.
He had a slight hitch to his wedding.
You know what? I'm actually going to stop this one here. I don't care about George Osborne. I don't care about Just Stop Oil showing up. That's funny as fuck. That's based. I don't give a fuck. I've had enough of this. Victoria Atkins is a bitch. How dare she come out with such a response? And try to say, oh no, I care about it. No, you fucking don't. If you actually cared, you'd have actually given a response that didn't make you come across as a heartless cunt. Right. Rachel Reeves, and then I'm gonna have to end it because one, we're already up at an hour and 20 minutes, and two, I'm starting to push it with my throat infection or whatever it is going on with my throat, the back of my throat at the moment.
I just want to start on reports in the Sun newspaper that a BBC presenter, according to the mum of somebody, paid a 17-year-old £35,000 for explicit pictures. Do you have any concerns about the way this has been handled by the BBC?
It's deeply concerning. The idea that some presenters think that they act with impunity and they can get away with these sorts of things, it does call into question the ethics, the investigations, how long these things take. And the BBC, but also other broadcasters, do need to get a grip because we seem to lurch from one scandal to another and more needs to be done.
The timing is important, isn't it? Because according...
I have said, not just on this video, but on other videos, I'm not a big fan of Rachel Reeves. That was a good answer.
To this woman, she complained to the BBC in May, but the presenter in question then stayed on air for weeks after.
I think that's the concerning thing, that someone makes a complaint, a very serious complaint, and then puts on the telly the next night, and they're still there. And that's not good enough. That is not treating people, victims, with respect, and that's why there needs to be a full investigation. But look, I think this goes beyond the BBC. We had stories, was it last month, about Philip Schofield, and there may be more to come, who knows? But the investigations, but also the standards, need to be reformed and looked at again.
What do you mean by that? The standards need to be reformed and looked at again?
Well, the investigations need to be much swifter. Action needs to be taken quicker when there are serious complaints like this. But the standards at which presenters operate just need to be much, much higher. No one should be able to get away with this sort of thing and think they can get away with it. And that's clearly what a lot of people seem to think today.
Do you think then that because presenters are in the public eye, in some ways they're public figures, that they should be held?
I'm not sure what it is about Reeves. Her voice is she reminds me of a teacher I once had. That was really tedious.
To a different standard then?
Really tedious.
If anybody did this in any job, whether a teacher, a doctor, a television presenter, a politician, it wouldn't be acceptable. But when serious allegations are made like this, I don't think it's right that those people stay in those jobs whilst those very serious investigations go on.
Do you think that the individual should be named? We've seen other presenters having to come out to say that it's not them, for example.
I'm not totally sure about that, because you can get vexatious complaints. But that means there's a greater onus on doing these things quickly. They shouldn't drag on for months and months.
No, the
BBC or whoever the employer is needs to quickly do these investigations and take the appropriate action. And I'm not convinced so far that that's happened in this case.
Do you think there should be a police element to this as well? If you look, for example, at the 1978 Protection for Children Act, it's an offence to make, distribute, possess or show any indecent images of anyone aged under 18.
I think this is a question that the investigation needs to get into. But obviously, it's deeply.
I would much prefer a more blunt answer on this. But would I actually be correct in saying that she can't be as open as she'd like because of the possibility of investigations going on? Let me know in the comments.
Concerning the idea that this was happening when the young person was just 17 years old.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, you are our lead interview this morning because, according to the polls, you could be the second most important politician after the next election. So I just want to start as well with one of the big kind of diplomatic stories, if I may. You know, the US President Joe Biden arriving in the UK later. Now, we know the US want to send cluster bombs to Ukraine. Is that something you support?
We all agree that Ukraine needs to be properly armed to fight Russia and their illegal invasion. But I am concerned about the use of cluster bombs, and it's not just the UK who has these concerns. Other countries clearly do as well. And so I would like to find a way to properly arm Ukraine, but without using these weapons, which can have an impact not just on the battlefield at that time, on that day, but for months and years afterwards. That is something that caused me deep concern, and many other people as well. So while I support President Biden's desire to ensure that Ukraine is fully armed to fight Russia, I'm not convinced that these are the appropriate weapons.
The UK, of course, banning their use because they so often kill and injure.
Well, this is
civilians.
exactly the point, that the problem with cluster bombs is that they don't all explode straight away, and they can explode later, and that's why there's such a danger to civilian life. So that is the specific issue around cluster bombs. Look, America has done more than any other country in the world to ensure that Ukraine is properly armed to fight Russia. We all welcome that and should be very grateful to the support that America has given. But I think it is right that the allies should be able to say, we're not sure about this. And on the issue of cluster bombs, that is not something that I would be able to endorse.
Would you like Rishi Sunak to raise it with President Biden later then?
I welcomed what the Prime Minister said yesterday when he was asked about the use of cluster bombs. I'm sure it will be on the agenda this week. But look, I think we should also pay tribute to what the US has done during the course of this war in ensuring that Ukraine is properly armed. Britain has played its part as well, but America, more than any other nation, has helped to ensure that Russia can fight this, that Ukraine can fight Russia in this illegal war.
Now, there's just one other story that I'd like your view on before we can move on to your vision for the economy, which, of course, is why you're here. George Osborne, his wedding, was disrupted yesterday when a protester threw orange confetti over him.
That.
We think it may be Just Stop Oil, although they haven't completely claimed credit for it, if you like. What's your reaction to what happened?
I've got no time for Just Stop Oil. To be honest, I think it's a bit pathetic and quite tedious, disrupting tennis, snooker, other people's weddings.
I think you're tedious. Like, as I said earlier, she reminds me of one of my a former teacher I had. Like, it was really, really fucking tedious.
If they want,
it's quite funny. Like, it's quite funny. Someone tedious saying that a group of people are being tedious. I find it funny.
To tackle climate change, engage in the policy answers. But they're not building support for their cause. They're doing the exact opposite. So it's counterproductive. And it's rude, frankly. You know, people pay to go to Wimbledon. It may be their one time.
They're a protest group. They're not they're supposed to be going out with fucking good manners. Oh, sorry. A comment was made on James O'Brien earlier that I quite agree with. In that we in this country have forgotten what it means to protest. That's a bad response. I mean, it's a typical response coming from someone like her.
Time in their life that they get to Wimbledon. They don't want to be disrupted by a load of protesters.
We don't. we don't want the continuation of the bourgeois fucking ignoring the public when it comes to wanting to actually get a move on with the green transition.
And look, I care passionately about tackling the climate emergency. It's why Labour set out our Green Prosperity Plan to reduce bills, to boost energy security, to get jobs in Britain, and to pass on to our children and grandchildren a better planet. But that is through practical policy, not through disrupting other people's lives. That's not the way to do it.
According to the Sunday Times, Keir Starmer said this week, "I'm not interested in tree huggers. In fact, I hate them." Well, what's your stance on tree huggers?
Look, I love a tree. What I don't like is needless disruption to people's lives.
I'm a bit of a tree hugger, so, like, Starmer hates me, apparently. You know what? I really don't care. This is one of those where, like, it's going to happen whether the politicians like it or not. Like, I'm still going to vote Labour or Lib Dems in the next election because the Tories are worse.
And the idea that you're going to get closer to tackling the climate emergency by stopping working people getting to their jobs, by chaining yourselves to bridges, by disrupting sporting events.
There is. I would prefer to see these people like pull their money together to start making stuff to deal with the climate crisis, to show a way forwards, and then at the same time do protests. But they're just doing protests.
Frankly, there's better ways to tackle the climate emergency. You're not helping, you're actually making things worse.
Okay, it's very clear. Right, let's talk about the economy, shall we? You're announcing some housing plans today. What's the idea?
Most people
3D printed houses.
Dream of owning their own home. Certainly most families do. And yet that dream, for too many, is slipping further out of reach. And indeed, for others who have managed to get on the housing ladder, that dream is now turning to a nightmare because of the Tory mortgage bombshell. That means people coming off fixed-rate mortgage deals are seeing their average payments go up by £250 a month. We've set out plans to help people with their mortgages during this crisis, to help with a private renters charter for those who are stuck in the private rented sector. But the truth is we need more than sticking plasters. We need to start building homes so that young people and families can realise those dreams of home ownership. And that is what I'm setting out today. But it's also part of a wider package of measures that I describe as securonomics. It's about securing family finances so that working people can realise their dreams and ambitions. Home ownership is going backwards under the Conservatives. It is now clear that for people who dream of owning their own home, it is the Labour Party that is on your side.
I just want to chat a little bit about what a Labour economy would look like, because it feels to me like you talk an awful lot, right, about the problems with the country, the housing crisis that you talk about there. You say you want to get state schools on par with the private sector, the NHS, you've spoken about at length. And yet you also say you want to keep the public finances under control. I mean, I'm just trying to square these things off. If you're Chancellor after the next election, you're going to inherit a really difficult situation. I think we can have a look at the current government spending projections from the Office of Budget Responsibility, and you can see a squeeze happening post the next election, which we believe could be next year. Are you going to stick to these spending plans set out by the Office of Budget Responsibility?
Well, we're likely to have 2 more forecasts from the Office of Budget Responsibility before the next election, so I don't think we should be fixated with any particular current forecast because they'll be updated 2 more times before we get to the next election. But there's no contradiction between being fiscally responsible and wanting to support public services. In fact, you can't support public services unless you put fiscal, economic responsibility at the heart of everything you do.
It's very clear that's what you want to do, to have that fiscal responsibility, that credibility, if you say. Now, before the 1997 election, Gordon Brown promised to stick to the Conservative Party's spending plans for the first 2 years. Are you going to do the same?
It's too far ahead of an election to set out those plans. As I say, there's going to be probably 2 more forecasts, another budget, another autumn statement before.
So you won't say whether you'll spend more or less?
Well, we've already set out, as you know, Sophie, some specific tax rises. So, for example, if you make Britain your home, I believe you should pay your taxes here, and under a Labour government you will. That's why we'll get rid of the non-dom tax status, and we
how
would
much
use
will that raise?
About £3.5 billion a year, and we would use.
It was £1 billion. Have they done more? Have they done? Is this new number from nowhere, or is this due to more research? Like what?
Use that money to invest in our NHS workforce. You had Steve Barclay, Sophie, on this programme last week, and you rightly said to him, you've set out an NHS workforce plan, but you haven't set out how you would pay for it. Labour have. We've said that we would pay for that expansion of the number of training places for doctors, for nurses, for midwives, of health visitors, by getting rid of that non-dom tax status.
Will you also pay the NHS workers what the independent peer review body would like to see as well, 6% pay rise?
Well, we haven't actually seen the recommendations yet of the pay review body.
But that's what we understand it will be.
Well, look, I would urge the government to publish that so that we can have a debate about it.
And will you accept whatever they recommend? Or
again, I'm not going to have a negotiation on the telly for public sector wages.
You can't criticise the government for not being open about what they'll do, how they're going to pay for it. This is a huge part of the budget. Whether or not you'll accept the pay rises that the pay review bodies recommend.
We haven't seen those pay rises, and I'm certainly not going to sign up to something before even seeing it. But the recommendations of the pay review bodies should then be taken into negotiation between working people, the trade unions that represent them. My mum and dad were both primary school teachers. I know how.
I'm actually not sure how to take that answer.
Hard people in the public service work, including our teachers, our doctors, our nurses. They deserve to be treated with respect, and part of that respect is getting around the negotiating table.
Part of the respect's being paid well. It's not going around the negotiating table. They don't care if you're around the table or not.
No, they absolutely
care about what you're going to say.
No, they absolutely do.
Mick Lynch has said many times, "Get around the table." This is why. This is where Sophie Rich does my fucking head in. No, like Reeves is right here. People like Mick Lynch have said, "Look, if they just get around the table." I heard this from the other union leaders as well.
Care about whether they're going to get paid a wage that's going to allow them to keep up with the cost of living.
They absolutely do care about being treated with respect. And one of the things that the teachers and the nursing unions have said is that they want the government to get round the table and negotiate not just pay, but also workload, retention, recruitment. It's why Bridget Phillipson, for example, has said for teachers specifically, there should be some more support for newly qualified teachers, including a bonus payment. So there are practical things that we can do with, for example, getting rid of that non-dom status. Also, by having VAT on private schools, that would raise around £1.6 billion. That should go into our state schools.
3.6 billion. I mean, you're talking about spending £28 billion on the Green Prosperity Plan. I'm just questioning the
billions of pounds, Sophie.
How this adds up.
Billions of pounds, Sophie, that will be spent on public services through targeted tax increases, getting rid of the non-dom tax status, getting VAT on private school fees to help all of our state schools, and also with private equity treating their bonuses like income and taxing it accordingly.
Now, before you enter politics...
Okay, that last one, what does that mean? Can anyone else in chat, anyone else who watches this, can you answer that last question? Can you answer this one for me? That last point she made, I'm just going to rewind it.
Schools, and also with private equity treating their bonuses like income and taxing it accordingly.
What does that mean? That sounds based as fuck to me. That sounds really good to me. What? Like, I'm not, like, I've got only a basic fundamental understanding of economics. Does anyone else who has a better understanding of economics, can they explain, like, where that sits politically, that last point, and just how much that could be gained from that?
Now, before you entered politics, you used to work at the Bank of England. There's been an awful lot of criticism.
Again, let me know in the comments.
About how the Bank of England has handled the inflation crisis, particularly that they were too slow to put up interest rates at the beginning. What's your own view?
Well, I worked at the Bank of England for many years before I became a member of Parliament. And one of the things about that relationship now between the Treasury and the Bank of England is that they have operational independence, and the respect for those economic institutions is absolutely essential.
Is that not a bit of a concern, though, right? I understand they're independent, but if the government can't pass any comment at all about what one of our most important institutions is doing...
Governments can, Sophie. Last summer, Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng passed no end of judgment on economic institutions. They sacked the permanent secretary at the Treasury, they undermined the independence of the Bank of England, and they didn't let the Office of Budget Responsibility do their forecast. That is part of the reason that we had the disastrous response to the mini-budget that saw mortgage rates go through the roof. Let me just finish this point. Respect for...
Nice. Again, I do find her tedious, but I like that. Like, she was like, no, hang on. You asked me a question. I want to finish my fucking answer. I would be exactly like that in this position.
Economic institutions is a huge part of the economic stability that we've enjoyed in the UK, and you mess with that with your peril.
Is it right that you're considering changes to the Monetary Policy Committee, that the people who decide on interest rates, to make them more diverse or to get a wider range of people in there?
I would like to see a more diverse range of people making economic policy. We've had a Chancellor of the Exchequer for 800 years. It's never been a woman. There's never been a woman Governor of the Bank of England either. I would like to see more diversity
in
economic policy making. I hope to break that glass ceiling next year and become the first female Chancellor of the Exchequer in 800 years. And I would use that opportunity and that role to reduce some of those inequalities in society, like the fact that it's more than 50 years since Barbara Castle introduced the Equal Pay Act, and yet there's still a 15% gap between what men and women are paid in our economy.
What would you do? What about the Monetary Policy Committee? Would you try and make it more diverse? I'm not actually clear.
Well, I would like to see more diversity, but you've got to get the best people for the job. But I think more diverse groups of people make better decisions. But
okay, so I think I like this answer. I think I like this answer. It sounds like she's saying that, like, she doesn't want to say anything concrete, but like through you know, things being more, you know, through trying to get the best people, you're looking at a more diverse group. I wonder if the way they're looking at it is, I don't know. To me, like, that, what that says, I'm not sure what they actually mean, like what they're actually doing, but like what she's saying to me is that because they're looking for the best people possible, that means a more as diverse a group as possible. That's what that answer says to me. Whether that's what they do is another thing completely.
You've got to respect economic institutions. If you don't, you end up in the mess that Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng ended in last year, which has brought our economy close to collapse.
We're nearly running out of time, but there's just one thing I quite want to ask you at the end about your relationship with Keir Starmer. If you look at prime ministers and their chancellors, their relationship is always quite interesting. Like, if you have a productive relationship, it almost seems to me like you have to get on, but there have got to be points of tension as well. You've got to bring different perspectives to that role. And I just wonder, you know, frankly, you and Keir Starmer feel pretty similar. Is there anything you disagree on?
Football. He's obsessed with it, and I have no interest in it whatsoever.
Anything else on football?
Look, you know, obviously we've got our own jobs to do. My job is to make sure that the numbers add up. But Keir is fully, absolutely supportive of that because he knows that there's no shortcuts.
You know, do you ever have a row over something where he's saying, look, we've got to do this, you're pulling in a different direction, or are you always in lockstep on everything?
I think we're in lockstep. Keir recognises the importance of the rock of economic and fiscal responsibility must underpin everything that we do. And I think that results in better decision making.
Again, I'm not entirely sure on that answer.
And people know that we are fully aligned on the big issues that are going to confront us if we have the opportunity to serve after the next election.
I'm not entirely sure where I sit on this context, actually. I mean, it's been said that the mix of Attlee and Bevan was why Labour was did so much good, but they were able to win. I don't know. I wonder if Attlee was more like Bevan, like they could have got more done, and like dentistry would have been free, and would have been under the NHS from the beginning.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, well, this has been. I mean, I know I've only looked at the Sky News stuff. I need to do a bit more across different stuff. I've got to catch up with this. I thought I'd spend a couple of hours today catching up with what happened over the weekend and stuff, and a bit of news from today. And yeah, let me know though. There's a couple of in the different questions I've answered that I've asked today. Please give me some answers in the comments. I don't mean in none of these questions towards anyone viewing. It's not that I'm not I'm genuinely curious. I want to learn. If I'm ignorant of something, I want to correct that. So yeah, I do hope everyone was able to put up with me throughout this. But yeah, I don't. Like I say, Rachel Reeves is not high up on my on my list. Like, she's really, really tedious. But that wasn't too bad. That wasn't too bad from Labour, but it's not enough, is it? Really? Yeah. Well, I hope everyone is having a good summer so far, and from Shadow Eater, Freya, Lady Sif, from Deafness Year, blessed Rosé people. God bless you.